Welcome to the Administrative Review Preparation webinar. This webinar will provide an overview of the administrative review process with the goal of helping you understand what the process looks like from start to finish, including the documentation you will be requested to provide and the many different program areas and requirements covered during the review. We are required to conduct administrative reviews to ensure regulatory compliance, but we prefer to think of reviews as an opportunity for technical assistance. During a review of the school nutrition programs, there are multiple subprograms that will be reviewed, including the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program. If any of the schools in a school food authority participate in the after-school snack program and/or the fresh fruit and vegetable program, we will review at least one meal service from these programs as well. If any of your sites operate the CACFP at-risk program, that program will be reviewed by a different team of people and possibly in a different school year, as CACFP regulations require reviews to be conducted once every 3 years, while the school nutrition programs only have to be reviewed once every 5 years. This is a big picture view of a typical administrative review timeline. Throughout the remaining slides, we will be breaking down this timeline step by step as we walk through the process from start to finish. While not shown here, a representative from CN Resources Finance team will also schedule a call within a week or two of the administrative review notification being sent out to obtain some additional information for the resource management portion of the review. The scope of the administrative review focuses on two primary review components: critical areas of review and general areas of review. The difference between critical and general does not signify a higher priority of one area of review over another. The regulations use the term critical areas to describe performance standards 1 and 2, but compliance standards in the general areas of review are equally important. The main difference is that the regulations require fiscal action for the critical areas, but for the general areas, the regulations provide the framework to allow state agencies to take fiscal action or withhold payments for program noncompliance at the state agency's discretion. The critical areas of review are Performance Standard 1 and Performance Standard 2. Performance Standard 1 focuses on the certification and benefit issuance process and the accuracy of meal counting and claiming. Performance Standard 2 focuses on whether meals claimed for reimbursement meet meal pattern requirements. Critical areas of the program tie directly to the federal reimbursement that the sponsor receives. Therefore, findings in these areas may result in fiscal action. The general areas of review cover all of the other regulatory requirements that are not as directly related to meal service as the critical areas. Resource management addresses the maintenance of the nonprofit school food service account, paid lunch equity requirements, revenue from non-program foods, and indirect costs. Other general program compliance includes civil rights, school food authority on-site monitoring, local school wellness policy, smart snacks in school, professional standards, water, food safety and storage, and Buy American, reporting and record keeping, and school breakfast program and summer food service program outreach. There are additional review questions and additional documentation that will be required if any site that you sponsor operates any of the programs listed here. Again, the CACFP at-risk review will be conducted by another team at another time, possibly even in a different school year. The site selection process is a prescribed method based on federal regulation. As shown in the chart, the number of sites to be reviewed depends on the total number of sites sponsored by the school food authority. If a school food authority sponsors any schools that are not affiliated with their district, those sites must be reviewed in addition to the number of sites indicated in the chart. Also, if the school food authority has any sites that operate the Community Eligibility Provision, or CEP, and the site selection process does not result in the review of at least one CEP site, an abbreviated review will be conducted for at least one CEP site. Lunch will be reviewed at all selected sites, and breakfast will be reviewed at 50% of the selected sites. If the school food authority operates the after-school snack program at any sites, at least one of the sites will be reviewed. If the School Food Authority operates the fresh fruit and vegetable program at any sites, at least 1 out of every 5 fresh fruit and vegetable program sites will be reviewed. If more than one site is being reviewed, a meal compliance risk assessment will be conducted to determine which site will receive a targeted menu review. Going back to the timeline shown earlier, the first step in the administrative review process starts with receiving a notification letter and request for documentation. This request will be sent at least 6 weeks prior to the on-site review. CN Resource will be hosting another webinar to go over how they collect documentation, but this slide provides a general idea of what to expect. The review notification should provide details about when documents are due, what sites are being reviewed, and when the on-site review is scheduled for. A hefty amount of documentation is required to be provided. CN Resource collects most, if not all, documentation electronically via a secure portal. They will set you up with an account for their portal during the initial notification phase. The documentation listed here is what RIDE would collect prior to the on-site review, but there is additional documentation that RIDE used to collect during the on-site review. CN Resource will collect all documentation ahead of the on-site review so that during the on-site review, they can focus specifically on meal service. The next few slides will provide more details about the documentation listed here, followed by some additional slides that will provide details about the other required documentation that is not listed here. The benefit issuance document is a list of all students enrolled at every site within the School Food Authority and should include first and last names, eligibility determinations, the date the determination was made, the method the determination was made by, for example, meal benefit application or direct certification, and if any changes were made to the determination during the school year, you should also provide the updated eligibility determination and the date the change was made. The direct certification list is a list of students that are directly certified by category and the date that determination was made. These documents must be provided in spreadsheet format and should not be grouped by eligibility status. Student certifications are selected for review from these lists based on the USDA's prescribed selection process. The Dietary Specifications Assessment tool contains off-site and on-site review elements. The tool is intended to evaluate specific food service practices for breakfast and lunch to determine the level of risk for not meeting the dietary specifications regulatory requirements. Responses to the off-site portion of the Dietary Specifications Assessment tool determine whether the school selected for a targeted menu review is low risk or high risk for non-compliance with dietary specifications regulatory requirements. If the school selected for a targeted menu review is low risk, the state agency must verify compliance during the on-site review. If the targeted menu review school is high risk, the state agency must complete a nutrient analysis for both breakfast and lunch, if applicable, using USDA-approved software and complete the high-risk on-site review procedures. 1 full week of menu documentation is required for all sites being reviewed. This documentation includes worksheets for breakfast and lunch or reports from approved nutrition software, menus, production records, child nutrition labels, product formulation statements, and standardized recipes. You will be required to provide a copy of the most recent wellness policy, as well as the most recent wellness policy assessment. Civil rights documentation will be reviewed for use of the proper non-discrimination statement and to assess whether your civil rights complaint procedure covers requirements specific to the child nutrition programs. The off-site assessment tool is lengthy, so it's a good idea to start it as soon as possible and complete a little at a time. Feel free to reach out to RIDE with questions or technical assistance at any time. The next few slides will provide details on additional documentation related to the critical review areas that will be collected ahead of the review. The purpose of reviewing certification and benefit issuance is to ensure all eligibility determinations are correct and result in accurate claims for reimbursement by eligibility type. Based on the certification selections mentioned on a previous slide, CN Resource will ask you to upload specific meal benefit applications to their portal for their review. They will also ask for a specific number of denied meal benefit applications and examples of benefit issuance letters. You will also need to upload all documentation related to verification efforts to CN Resources portal for their review. Meal count source documentation for the month of review will be required for CN Resource to validate 1 month of meal counts. They will also need to collect meal counts for the meals they observe while they are on site. The School Food Authority must have a meal counting and claiming system that accurately counts, records, consolidates, and reports the number of reimbursable meals claimed by category. The meal counting and claiming process must include a mechanism, whether manual or electronic, for counting meals and consolidating meal totals at each school within the School Food Authority. The mechanism must include an internal control system that validates the total meal counts prior to the submission of the claim for reimbursement to the state agency. The next several slides will provide details on additional documentation related to the general review areas that will be collected ahead of the review. All on-site monitoring forms will need to be uploaded to CN Resources portal. If on-site monitoring has not been completed at the time of documentation collection, you may need to provide the planned date of completion and/or provide on-site monitoring forms from the previous school year. As discussed on a previous slide, you will need to provide a copy of your wellness policy and evidence that the policy has been assessed at least once in the last 3 years. You may also need to provide wellness committee meeting notes. In addition to all of the meal pattern documentation discussed on a previous slide, you will also need to provide a sample of nutrition facts labels for any Smart Snacks available during the school day. You can check your Smart Snacks items for compliance ahead of time by using the Smart Snacks calculator linked here. If you are unable to access the link here, you can simply use the keywords Smart Snack Calculator in your web browser, which should bring up a link to the Healthier Generations webpage where the calculator is located. You will need to provide evidence that all food service staff, including administrative staff, have completed the required training hours. This will include your training log and may also include evidence of completed trainings. You may also need to provide food safety certification documentation and evidence that certain staff meet specific education requirements for their role in managing the school nutrition programs. Reporting and record-keeping requirements will be assessed for timely submission and appropriate maintenance of records as all other documentation is being observed. School food authorities are required to make families aware of the availability of the school breakfast program and summer food service program. Even schools that do not participate in the summer food service program must still advertise the availability of summer food service meal sites throughout the state. The intent and scope of monitoring for resource management is to apply a systematic approach to ensuring the overall financial health of a school food authority's nonprofit school food service account. Resource management documentation that CN Resource will collect may include, but is not limited to, the School Food Authority's Statement of Revenues and Expenses, a balance sheet, general ledger, food service invoices, audit reports, and other similar documents. Documentation to be collected for the after-school snack program is similar to the meal counting and meal pattern documentation discussed on previous slides. Documentation required for the review of the fresh fruit and vegetable program includes invoices for the month being reviewed and potentially payroll records if administrative costs are being charged to the program. As stated on a previous slide, a conference call will be scheduled shortly before the on-site visit to go over the responses to the off-site assessment and to provide feedback or ask for follow-up information on all of the documentation that was collected. The off-site assessment tool allows the state agency to gain a better understanding of school food authority operations prior to the on-site review, thus providing for a more robust review while decreasing the state agency's on-site review time. The state agency's analysis of this information informs the scope of the on-site portion of the administrative review. Again, there will be a separate call earlier on to discuss questions related to resource management. The length of the on-site portion of the review depends on the size of the school food authority. Typically, the number of days on-site corresponds to the number of sites being reviewed. Most on-site reviews end up being between 1 and 3 days, with the exception of a few larger school food authorities that may require more days to observe meals at all of the selected sites. The on-site review will kick off with an entrance conference, which is intended to give an overview of the on-site review process and answer any outstanding questions or collect any missing documentation. Anyone involved in the day-to-day operation of the school nutrition programs is appropriate to attend. The entrance conference is generally brief, but may require the use of a meeting room, so please plan ahead and schedule space as soon as you are notified of the date of the on-site review. As shown on previous slides, most documentation for the critical review areas is collected and reviewed ahead of the on-site review, but the main purpose of the on-site review is to observe meal service, and a few more documents may be needed. The meal pattern is the foundation of federal school nutrition programs, and state agency staff must ensure school food authorities are offering reimbursable meals at breakfast and lunch according to the regulations. State agency staff must ensure schools operating the National School Lunch Program and/or the School Breakfast Program prepare, offer, and serve meals to students that meet the meal pattern requirements for the appropriate age grade groups on all reimbursable meal service lines. Additionally, state agency staff must ensure that every reimbursable meal service line meets the daily and weekly meal pattern requirements for the appropriate age grade group served. Also, as shown on previous slides, most documentation for the general review areas is collected and reviewed ahead of the on-site review. There are a few general review areas that are observed on-site though, and will be discussed on the next few slides. Most of the items listed here were discussed on a previous slide with the documentation that will be reviewed off-site, with the exception of the Injustice for All poster. CN Resource will look to see that a poster is present at each meal service location. Schools participating in the school nutrition programs must make potable water available to children at no charge in the location where meals are served. There are several ways to provide access to potable water, including allowing students to use a water fountain outside of the cafeteria during meal service. The food safety plan, temperature logs, and Buy American documentation may be requested ahead of the on-site review, but CN Resource will still observe the entire food service area, including areas where food is prepared and stored, to ensure compliance with food safety standards. They will also check to see that the most recent food safety inspection is posted in a public-facing location, and if you have not received 2 food safety inspections at the time of the on-site review, they may ask to see the food safety inspection reports from the previous school year. Note that federal procurement regulations require an entirely separate review for procurement, and that review will be handled by Robert Gauthier from our office. You should have already received notification regarding the procurement review and be working directly with Bob on completing the review. Some of the items requested for the procurement review may seem redundant to what you will need to provide for the resource management portion of the admin review, but you do need to provide the required documentation for both reviews. Once review activities are complete, there will be an exit conference. The purpose of the exit conference is to notify School Food Authority staff of any program findings identified, the extent of the findings, and a preliminary assessment of the actions needed to correct the findings. After conclusion of the on-site review, the School Food Authority will receive an administrative review report. The administrative review report should be provided to the School Food Authority within 30 days of the conclusion of the on-site review. The report will include required corrective action to be completed by a specific deadline. Note that RIDE is required to withhold payments if the School Food Authority does not complete corrective action within the specified time frame. Corrective action is generally due within 30 days of receiving the administrative review report. Any findings related to Performance Standards 1 or 2 may result in fiscal action. If fiscal action must be assessed, details will be provided in the report. Once all corrective action has been submitted and approved, the administrative review is complete and a closure letter will be sent. The closure letter notes that all corrective action has been resolved, and if fiscal action has been assessed, the amount and any repayment details will be included in the letter. RIDE is also required to post a summary of the review findings on the RIDE website. If you have any questions about the administrative review at any time throughout this process, please feel free to reach out to RIDE with questions. Thank you.